can't read without them. New Smyrna Beach, City of New Smyrna Airport Advisory Board meeting. We're going to start at 2 p.m. as scheduled. If I could ask everyone to silence their cell phones, we would appreciate that. And we have 2 members absent. I was looking at David Mabe's post on Facebook of he's on a cruise with Jim in the BVI's on a sailboat, and they're having a ball. So we're a little bit jealous.
I bet they're sad they missed this.
We're a little bit jealous today because 2 of our board members are taking a sailing cruise as the British Virgin Islands. So we'll hold down the fort for them. Tammy, you want to call the roll call?
Yes. Chair Dempsey?
Here.
Member Caudell?
Here.
Member Diaz? Here. Member Lester? Here.
Okay. Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and just an introduction?
Sure. So my name is Chaylee Diaz. I am the Director of Recruiting and Compensation at Embry-Riddle. I have been with them for about 8 years. I live on Sunset Drive, so obviously this is near and dear to me in many ways, just from the aviation community, and also just a member of New Smyrna. I graduated from New Smyrna High, and before going to Riddle, I was actually in the U.S. Army as well.
Good for you. Well, I'm proud to say that I'm a 1976 graduate of Embry-Riddle.
Well, good for you.
I'm an alumni. All right. Okay, we have no presentations for today, so we will go right into the public input. Do we have anyone here from the public that would like to make comments? We have available 3-minute windows for public comment, and those are monologues, not dialogues. It's just an opportunity for you to present your thoughts, concerns to the Airport Advisory Board. Do we have anyone that would like to present? Okay. Just introduce yourself and in your case, where you work.
Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you guys for your time. My name is Shane Williams. I'm the Director of Flight Operations for Epic Flight Academy. I'm also a flight instructor and a check airman as well, still for the company. A little bit about our past history. As you guys may or may not know, Epic has gone to the point we have hired a personal noise abatement officer for the company. It has transitioned a couple times, but we do keep that position open. Their job is to continually check on noise abatement, on the voluntary noise abatement procedures, and things that may go astray during our flights. We've changed our hiring processes for new hires or instructors that have come on board. This is now included into that onboarding process to make sure they're aware of it, they understand it, and that they obey it. Up to and including termination is something that we tell them. Even though it is a voluntary program, it's company policy for us at Epic. We've also included this into our student curriculum. So in our ground schools, in certain topics with the flight courses with our students, the instructors are reviewing this as well with the students because they do fly by themselves, they do fly solo. There's not always an instructor on board the aircraft at all times. So to point out first, by no means are efforts done. This is a journey that we're going to continue to stay on and hope to continue to fight and make better. But at this time, we do feel that we do want to draw a little bit of a line in the sand. And what that means, and let me elaborate, the change to 9 a.m., we start to worry now with safety of flight issues. A lot of the mornings, 7 and 8 a.m., 6:30, even when the sun rises earlier in the summer, that's when we send a lot of our student solos, right? So a lot of those initial solos, that first time the student's in the airplane by themselves, we usually send those flights early in the morning. Some of the reasons for that, it's calmer weather. Usually some of the environmental aspects are a lot more calm and relaxed. We also, sometimes we get better performance in the mornings before it gets hot and humid. Better performance is going to equal a higher altitude at a sooner time, just in case something goes to stray. Even 100 feet can make the difference between having a bad day and having a better day. The last thing is you guys all are aware, the New Smyrna Airport is an incredibly busy airport. I don't have the statistics, but I know it's quite up there in operations. And usually around 9 a.m., that's usually where we see a very large uptick with schools like Embry-Riddle, Phoenix, some of the local flight schools. They come down here to train just like we are. So we like to keep the student solos away from that hectic environment so that they can just kind of focus on those flights at that time. We also feel that this shift to a 9 a.m. Can impact our business as well. We feel that there's going to be some loss of income, some loss of flight hours, and we have a responsibility to not only to our students but also to the general public to try to help curb this national pilot shortage. And we feel that this will hamper and slow our student progression, and this is something that we do not want for our students as well. But yes, as I said, we are trying to draw a line in the sand here at a certain point, but by no means are we walking away. We're still going to be fully engaged. We're still willing to sit at the table. We would like to trial run starting the 8 a.m. noise abatement, the voluntary noise abatement procedure starting at 8 a.m., run a trial like we have in the past. Hopefully this will allow us to collect some data, get some more information, and then come back possibly at the next meeting and discuss how that data looks and how we would like to move forward at that time. So thank you guys for your time. I appreciate everybody for listening, and I hope you guys all have a very nice day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Shane. Okay. Moving on, excuse me, was there anyone else that had public input? Yes, ma'am, if you would introduce yourself. Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Dawn Whiteley. I live at 2071 Marsh Harbor Drive. I am close to the airport, and I just want to have y'all remember that there are many, many people that are living under the airport and have realized that there is a very large growth in the airport activities. I also want you to remember that while Epic Aviation is a part of that airport, that they are responsible for only 10% of the revenue that goes through the airport. And I am not saying in any way shut them down or whatever, and I appreciate very much all the strides that they're trying to make for the people. But I also would like you all, as leaders of the airport, to remember all of us down below. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving to the consent agenda. Item 4A, consider the approval of the Airport Advisory Board minutes from April 20, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Rat, I didn't see you get up. Okay.
Sorry. I just wanted to remind everyone that since the public forum that we had, there hasn't been any other opportunity made for both sides to come together and maybe work on continued issues or concerns that we all have. I really feel like there is an opportunity, even if we don't do a noise abatement committee once again, to maybe have a good neighbor roundtable where we can all, at least say, this has been great. We've seen improvement in this area, but this area over here still needs a little tweaking, where we can all work together to get some relief for the residents that have been hammered for a very long time. I was disappointed to hear that everyone just kind of knocked down the idea of having a calm wind runway. Runway 25 has been the primary runway and the runway that's always used when the wind is calm from any direction. And so the people to the west of the airport get hammered excessively early in the day. And And I noticed that they have been trying to use 7 a little bit more in the evening, which is a little quieter, but they are still flying until really, really late at night. And once the noise study review came up, and they said, oh, there's no noise. And when the changes were made to the noise abatement policy or good neighbor policy, I think we should call it a good neighbor policy, where you were trying to clarify the definitions and breaking up repetitive flying as touch and go, stop and taxi backs, blah, blah, blah. I really feel that once that was all erased, all of a sudden we had flight training that was starting at 6:30 in the morning, regularly. Thankfully, it has stopped in the last 4 to 6 weeks because we've had primarily east winds, whether they're southeast or northeast. But the primary winds here are not just east and west. They're more often genuinely, northwest winds and southeast winds, which would make 1129 more of a primary runway. But they rarely, if ever, use 29. When you did the open workshop for the public to come in, on your maps, you showed that runway 29 with a right-hand turn would be used often, to relieve traffic from the same area that was always getting hit. And you did do that after that meeting for a short while, but then thereafter, it just stopped. And runway 29 rarely ever gets used. This morning is a good example. The winds were out of the north-northwest, primarily north and northeast, north-northeast, but they weren't on 29 taking a right-hand turn, they were on 25 taking right-hand turns. And
We're at 3 minutes, Ms. Radigan.
okay.
All right.
But I just wanted to share that with y'all so y'all consider maybe doing something about a good neighbor roundtable where we can all work together to get some resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now, before I miss anybody else, is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Okay, during our public session.
Oh.
Yes, sir, if you would come up and introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike. I work as an instructor over at Epic Flight Academy, and I just want to give you a new instructor's perspective on this matter. So in the coming weeks, one of the more nerve-wracking things I'm going to do is send some of my first student solos out, and when that happens, I'm not on that plane, right? I'm not there to help out with flight safety, so that's one of my main concerns is safety of the flight. Just to echo what Shane said earlier, as the day goes on, as we move into the winter months, we get some higher winds. It can very easily and very rapidly get to a point where it's beyond what a student can reasonably handle, right? This becomes a very dangerous situation since obviously there's no pulling an airplane over up in the air, just getting out and waiting for it to stop. Other than that, I want the student to have a good experience because that first initial solo is a very big milestone in their training. That being said, we prepare them as best as we can. I personally hold my students to a very high standard, but there's a lot of things we can't control. One of the things being weather, like we mentioned earlier. Also mentioned earlier is busy airspace. To echo again what Shane said, we have a lot of other flight training operations in the area, and sending a student solo in peak flight training times is kind of the equivalent of sending a 16-year-old with a new driver's license down into Orlando on I-4 during the busy times, busy rush hour times. Not the greatest idea, might not have the greatest outcome. Probably not the greatest experience for that student. Overall, I think being able to start early in the day at the home base airport is the safest option for our students, and it'll provide the best experience for our students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm sorry, Mike, what was your last name?
Last name's Glick. G-L-I-C-K, Glick.
Glick, okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Appreciate the comments. Okay, pressing on, we're going to move into the consent agenda, item 4A. Those were the minutes from the April 25th that we had an error in the attendance with David was shown as being here when he wasn't. And we sent those back and Tammy revised those and all those corrections were made. So I've reviewed them and I'm good with them. Can we get a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. Also, the minutes from the list.
Can I do the roll on that real quick? Or
Oh,
you
yeah,
gonna
we
do
need
them?
to vote. Sorry.
Chair Dempsey,
Approved.
Member Caudell,
Approved.
Member Diaz. Approved. Member Lester.
Approved.
Okay. And the second 4B is consider the approval of our minutes from the July 9th meeting. And I reviewed those and made some comments to them, and Tammy, as those are the updated ones that are in the package, right?
Yes.
Okay. And unless anybody else has an issue, I just need a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Tammy, would you like to do the roll call?
Yes. Chair Dempsey,
Approved?
Member Caudell,
Approved.
Member Diaz. Member Starley.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Now, on the agenda that was put out, items 4C and 4D in the consent agenda, after considering that, we've decided to pull those from the consent agenda and move them into discussion so that we can have more discussion on those. And that's the item 4C is the 2025 board meeting schedule. And Tammy put a schedule together with tentative dates for 2025, but we took some feedback from the August 8th meeting where a lot of people were interested in us having this meeting later in the day, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, so that more people could attend. And so we're going to have some discussion on that and decide whether we want to stick with the 2 p.m. in the afternoon, or do we want to do and follow the feedback that we got in the August 8th meeting and move it later. And Tammy's got some information for us on what times might be available to do that.
Yeah, if you guys want to do later, we would have to come off of Thursdays, but we could do Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays
Okay.
if we're going to switch from 2 o'clock.
Well, are we going to go ahead and take care of this one right now?
It's up to you guys, what you guys decide with your discussion.
Okay.
So
Was there a time, Tammy?
It's up to you guys to tell me what time you guys are thinking.
Okay, this room is available from 5 until,
If we stay on Thursday, we would only have the room available until 6:30.
okay.
If we switch from Monday, Wednesday, or to Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, we can have flexibility.
Okay. I guess my question to you guys is there any problem with us moving to Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday?
Yeah, Monday, Wednesday, or Friday,
Oh, Monday, Wednesday, or Friday? Okay,
if you guys want to do it after 5 o'clock.
okay.
It needs to be after 5?
That was the consensus of the groups we met with
Can
at the
it be
workshop.
5?
If you,
can start at 5 and be over at
I can't do
6,
Wednesday.
6:30.
I can't
Okay.
do Wednesday at 5.
so do you guys want to?
I'm good with Monday, 5.
I'm good with Monday at 5.
I'm
Okay,
good
do you
with
guys want to
Monday.
make a motion then to change that, and I can email you guys a revised schedule?
Are you okay with Monday, 5?
Monday at 5?
Yeah, I'm okay. But what,
Motion to change schedule for the Airport Advisory Board meeting to allow the citizens of New Smyrna a better chance to attend, which we encourage from all citizens, to be Mondays at 5 o'clock,
It'll be the-
with the dates that are already in the Advisory Board preliminary schedule.
It would be the fourth Monday of the month, January.
January 23rd? Or, I'm sorry, that's not,
It would be
sorry.
January, April, July, October, fourth Monday of those months.
okay, say that again.
Fourth Monday of the month for January, April, July, and October.
Okay.
So it'd be January 27th?
Yes.
Well, she'll put a schedule out. She'll put a schedule out.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Now, that's beginning in January of 2025.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So the very first meeting tentatively, we can say would be January 27th at 5 a.m., or 5 p.m.
Right.
Well,
Does anybody want to come at 5 a.m.?
Hey, I don't know what time you get up, but I'm not getting up
We
that
want the
early.
citizens to attend before they come to work.
and that's item number 10, next meeting date. Okay.
Yes, sir.
We'll get to that. All right. Okay. All right.
Jim and all the members, if you just make sure that your mic is directly in front of your face so we can hear you better. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So you made a motion, did,
I did. I make a motion to make the change to the fourth Monday of the month scheduled for a 5 p.m. Airport advisory meeting.
Okay.
And then roll.
Second that?
Second.
There you
All right, Chair Dempsey,
are. Approved.
Member Caudell,
Approved.
Member Diaz,
Approved.
Member Lester.
Approved.
All right, thank you.
Okay. The second item that we're going to pull from the consent agenda is item 4D. Consider the approval to recommend the city to change the noise abatement procedure to simplify the noise abatement hours. We're going to move that into our discussion, which is actually line item number 5, which is coming up next. Okay, so we just need a motion to pull that from the consent agenda and put it into Arvin's noise abatement update so that we can discuss it there.
Yeah, motion.
Second.
All right, Chair Dempsey,
Approved.
Member Caudell,
Approved.
Member Diaz,
Approved.
Member Lester.
Approved.
Okay, that brings us to item number 5, the airport noise abatement, and Arvin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to our newest, welcome to our newest board member. We're glad that you're here. Thank you, and thank you for all of you in the audience today that are here. We're glad you're here. We're hoping for better turnouts, and hopefully with this the time change that we'll get even more interest in the future and continue to engage with everyone who has an interest in the airport and its business. So for the benefit of those of you who are here and don't have a complete history, and for those who are online and maybe watching in the future, I want to give you a brief review of what led us to this point in discussion of the voluntary noise abatement program. The original voluntary noise abatement program was put into place around the 2010 timeframe. And at that time, it was determined from the Part 150 study that was conducted that there was noise, but that it didn't reach a certain level. And you'll hear that reference many times, but nevertheless, it is a source of frustration and concern for the citizens at the levels that it is as. So one of the challenges is that the FAA's regulations and standards for what constitutes noise and therefore noise mitigation is at a different threshold. So to put it into layman's terms, they take an average noise decibel levels of 65 dNL, which is a day and night average. They're averaging noise levels over time. So if you had 20 noise events and they divide it by the hours of the day, and they take that, they have a formula that's calculated, and they rate the noise events that happen at night at double the rate. So because at night noise can seem louder, because everything is quieter. So when I came on board in 2022, I was very much aware of the fact that we still had a lot of issues, or we had a lot of very concerned citizens, as you can hear from some of the citizens that are here today with this issue. And after discussing it with the board, and after discussing it with our team, and discussing it with the city, we decided to see if there wasn't some other options available to us. What low-hanging fruit might there be out there? What could we do as an airport? What could we do as a city to improve noise? Is there other ways that we could be addressing this issue, understanding that there are restrictions on what an airport can and can't do regarding noise, because the airport is a public airport and it has strings attached, which I won't get into in too detail, but if you'd like more information on that, you could go to our website, nbsairport.com. It explains that more in depth. But in summary, about, I guess, a year and a half ago, I think it was maybe in July, we did host an open house where we kicked off a new noise study. It was not sanctioned by the FAA. It was something that we did on our own, and we did not do a full-blown, what they call 150 study, which is very heavily involved. But what we did do is update our what's called a noise exposure map. And that map outlined the areas where, again, DNL touches. So where is 55 DNL, where is 65 DNL? And they modeled that based on the data that we have now from a program called VerTower. VerTower is, for those of you who call about complaints, is a program that shows in real time and has a history of altitude and longitude and latitude location of aircraft. We're able to take that data and then model based on aircraft type, time of day. They can model I guess they claim anyway, more accurately than if you just placed a sensor in somebody's house, because that sensor is also going to pick up dogs barking, motorcycles, cars, try to determine what's the actual noise being generated by the aircraft. Not everyone agrees with this method. However, that was the method that was used and that is accepted by the FAA at this point. So from that data, we did not show an increase in noise, although there are times when it's demonstrated that we do have a significant amount of traffic at the airport. Sometimes it's busier than it was in 2010, and sometimes it's not. But there is a general trend that shows a little bit of an increase over time. We took that information, and I'm going to pull up what the consultant showed. I'm not going to get into too much details, but I am going to share with everyone what his recommendations were, and I'm going to pull that up now. And I thought it would be helpful if we just spend the time and kind of go through each one step by step. So this is a summary, and I know it's a little bit difficult to follow because there's been so many steps along the way, and that's why I wanted to pull this up and go step by step. So in February 27th of 2024, our consultant presented the results of his noise study to the City Commission. And like I just said, basically found no increase in noise levels since the last study in 2010. That's not to say that absolutely we don't recognize the impacts, but in terms of just scientific, from his study, that's what he found. However, he presented several recommendations to the city and to the airport. They were, number one, designate a calm wind runway. Number two, raise the pattern altitude. Number three, simplify voluntary noise abatement hours. Number four, continue education and outreach with flight schools. Regularly discuss noise in airport advisory board meetings, as we're doing today, where it's an actual agenda item, and we spend time talking about it and we receive input from it on it. Consider implementation of a disclosure or notification area. After these recommendations were presented to the City Commission, we brought them back to the advisory board. On March 7th, we presented them to the advisory board during a special meeting. For items 1 through 3, designating a calm wind runway, raising the pattern altitude, and simplifying the voluntary noise abatement hours, the AA advisory board meeting voted to hold a roundtable discussion with airport stakeholders and report the findings back to the advisory board. 4 through 5 voted to implement. 4 and 5 was to continue the education and regularly discuss noise. And 6, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Number 6 was they voted to recommend to the City Commission that they needed to do adding signage in some areas affected by airport noise to help educate buyers and homeowners. On April 14th, in between, I don't have the specific date, but we had a roundtable discussion. In attendance of that roundtable discussion were stakeholders, including Embry-Riddle, Phoenix East, Epic, tenants, air traffic control, one member of our advisory board. The following from that roundtable, I'm going to go in step by step. Number 1, and these items were discussed during the public meeting, which I'm going to share just shortly. So on May 14th, these are the following AAB recommendations. The advisory board voted on the 24th regarding the following, and then on May 14th it was presented. Number 1, designating a calm wind runway. So the issue here was is that strictly designating a calm wind runway 24 hours a day ties the hands of air traffic control to direct the aircraft effectively, safely, and efficiently. And when we look at other airports, the majority of the time, when they do have a calm wind runway, it is for when the air traffic control tower is not in use, or for airports that don't have an air traffic control tower. So based on the feedback that we had, the roundtable recommended and the advisory board agreed to recommend that the airport publish the calm wind runway as runway 7 to read or similar for noise abatement when air traffic control is closed. Runway 7 is calm wind runway in VFR conditions. So that is a little bit of a compromise on that issue. And again, this is where we stand today. Number 2, raising the pattern altitude. So there's various reasons why, and in the public meeting, for those of you who attended the public meeting, I went into a little bit more detail with a diagram of showing the airspace and how it's depicted, how New Smyrna's airspace actually sits underneath Daytona's airspace, almost like a shelf under another shelf. And our pattern altitude of 800 feet is to stay below the Daytona airspace of 1,200 feet. So when we talked to Flight Standards initially about this, and we talked to our group, they said, the flight standards from the FAA says, we can't guarantee that we can look at that and we could determine that we could increase it. However, the issue that was raised by our users, our stakeholders, and air traffic control especially, was that raising the altitude will actually have major safety concerns because of it creates a longer pattern, which aircraft flying further out and a longer climb period. So not only do now we have safety concerns, there's also a certain amount of increase in noise. And it's increasing noise in areas which don't have it already. And it's not really reducing the noise where it is now. That was based on our specific criteria here in New Smyrna. Not to say that in some cases that would not help. And so for that reason, the advisory board voted not to change the traffic pattern altitude. Number 3, the goal here was to simplify in our voluntary noise abatement program, and for anyone who wants a copy of it, it is up here on the table. One of the things that the consultant recommended was that why don't we simplify your voluntary noise abatement procedures, because they're currently a little confusing. They're confusing to students, they're confusing to residents, because you separate and you have different times for different operations. You're saying that you can't do repetitive traffic during this time period, but you can't do touch and goes during this time period. Well, repetitive is touch and go, and vice versa. Touch and go is repetitive. Although there is repetitive flight training that is not touch and go. And so the advisory board voted at that time to remove the statement of no touch and goes between 8 and, let's see, I don't have that in front of me. But regardless, they voted to remove. Do you have the voluntary noise abatement? Somebody have it in front of them? I apologize, I didn't have it in front of me. They removed one of the statements, so it simply say, no flight training between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And we tentatively tested this with Epic, just kind of without telling anybody else. We just tentatively tested this and almost immediately received a lot of very passionate feedback from the community that this was, and we could see that the levels of activity were going up. Because basically at that time we were saying it's a free-for-all, you could do touch and goes basically anytime you wanted up until 10 p.m. So based on that, we pulled that back and took that back to actually, we ended up talking about that in our public meeting, which I'm going to share with everybody in just a minute. So number 4, continue education and outreach. That's kind of a no-brainer. Obviously, that's something that we want to do, we have been doing, and like Shane from Epic mentioned earlier, that's something we've been working on now for about almost 2 years, and I have a report now that I'm going to show in just after we finish this part of the noise session. I have a report that I'm going to share with everybody so you can see exactly what we have been doing the past 2 years with Epic, especially Epic, and the other schools, but especially Epic. Regularly discuss noise in airport advisory board meetings. Advisory board voted to recommend that. And we are already doing that. We started doing that, I believe, the last meeting or so. It might have been 2 meetings. and just encouraging everybody to come and participate in that meeting. Consider the implementation of a disclosure notification. They voted to recommend that, and that's something that's in the hands of the city at this point to decide exactly how they'll take that. Now, none of these items, let me back up a second. So that was the summary of the roundtable and the Airport Advisory Board recommendations from April 24th. We presented these recommendations to the City Commission on May 14th, 2024. So at that time, the City Commission, based on their discussions at that meeting, the Commission gave our staff direction to hold a public meeting and that to discuss the proposed changes in greater detail. That public meeting was held here in the City Commission chambers on August 8th. In attendance were the mayor, several elected officials, and we had about 60 to 80 community members. We had a really good turnout, a lot of good feedback, and a lot of, I think, good interaction, and we're very appreciative of everybody who attended. In consideration of the public input we received, we received I would say we received many good ideas. Of the ones that we are able to do, one of the lowest hanging fruit, one of the things that we found would make the most sense is no repetitive flight operations between 2200 and 8 a.m. instead of the current hours of between 10 and 7 a.m. A lot of the feedback we got from the public that night was just giving a little bit of a break in the morning. That seemed to be a reoccurring theme. Some of the recommendations as far as, wanting to move the airport and some of these things, they're not possible at this point in time, or they fall outside what it's possible for the airport itself to do. And now here we are today. So that's kind of a summary of kind of what's led us up to today and the consideration of this item. And really, this is a replacement item based on the feedback we got on that August 8th meeting. I wanted to see if I left anything out. And before we kind of go into that discussion, is there anything that you all had a question on or anything you feel that I left out you want to make a further comment on in regards to the kind of the history of this issue?
I'm good.
I'm good.
So for your consideration, all of these items, 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, you've already voted on. They have not been implemented for the most part, except for number 4 and 5. But with your consideration of item number 3, I'll open it up for your discussion and comments, and then ultimately a decision. And this, again, would be your recommendation to the City Commission.
So where we are right now is, and what we're looking at to do today, is to change the third bullet on the VNAP procedures, the Voluntary Noise Abatement Program, to no repetitive flight operation between the hours of 2200 and 0800. Okay, so we're moving from 0700 to 0800, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock.
I want to just make a point that I reached out to other airports in the area, all of our tenants, the major flight schools, Embry-Riddle, Phoenix East. I did hear back, received some feedback from Phoenix East, which I shared, which is in your agenda packet. Other than that, other than Epic, I have not received any other feedback from tenants or large users.
Okay. All right. So for us to be able to bring this effort to closure and submit our recommendations on the noise issue to the City Commission for action, we need to do one more thing, and that's to make a motion for bullet number 2 to read no repetitive flight operations between the hours of 10 and 8. Okay, from 10 and 7. Would you like to make that motion, or do we need to have some discussion first?
I just want to make sure, I'd like to talk about it for a second, just to make sure everybody's on, like, so I did attend that city meeting, as I think you did as well. I think you did as well.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, hearing that the majority of the citizens, when asked if you had to choose, what would you prefer, it did sound as if mornings was a resounding concern for everybody if you have to choose. So having the I'm kind of I'm both ways on that. As a resident that also lives in the line of the flight, I don't know that there is a win for our community. I think later in the morning does help for people that want to sleep in. I would be in favor of the change, I guess, from 2200 to 0800 versus the 0700 that we're at. But I almost think that it almost requires a little bit more discussion on that, because I think while there was a lot of people present at that, my hope would be that would help, and then maybe we can always change it in the future. Maybe, I guess, as I'm sitting here thinking, hearing myself out loud, that we can agree. Is this, Arvin, just for clarification on something? You said something, and I want to make sure that we understand something. Is this to make a suggestion to the commission, or is this to actually make a change? This is to make a suggestion to the commission to have this voted on from their perspective, right, or at their level?
Yes, correct.
So this is just us as an airport advisory talking about this, saying we do agree with this. Let's make a suggestion to the commission, the city commission.
A recommendation.
A
Yes.
recommendation, if you will,
Yes.
yeah, to make this change. With the understanding that things can be changed if the community opposes to it. We're trying to give the community what they want. I agree and would make a motion for the 2200 to 0800 that we test it out, see if it makes the citizens happy. Hopefully, my hope would be that the citizens of New Smyrna Beach, as citizens, will come back and say, yes, we like that. It helps, and we appreciate it, and be appreciative for that change, and hopefully it makes a difference to their lifestyle. And if it doesn't, then at a later date, we can make another suggestion to change it to something that better suits the majority of the citizens. Again, we can't make a decision based on individuals, but the majority of our community.
Well, and that's one reason why we made the decision that we're looking at here from 2200 to 0800 and not 2200 to 0900, because we did get feedback, not just from Epic, but a letter from another flight school that uses our airport regularly with concern about going to 9 a.m. So the thinking is that we would, as I think Mike put it, go to 8, push it to 8, and see how that works, make sure there's no safety issues there. And then if we continue to get feedback, look at it again for the possibility of going to 9.
Yeah. So, I'll make a motion that we make the suggestion to the commission that from the Airport Advisory Board from 2200 to 0800.
Okay.
Second.
Oh, we have a second. All right.
Chair Dempsey,
Approved?
Member Caudell,
Approved.
Member Diaz,
Approved.
Member Lester.
Approved.
Okay, I think we need to do one more thing on that, though. We need to, I think, and we did this before when we sent the original recommendations to the city commission. We made a motion and directed the airport staff to take those recommendations to the city commission. We need to have a motion for the airport staff to take these updated recommendations to the city commission, because it's not what we sent before. We've changed it, okay? So we just need, I think, a procedural thing where we make a motion that as agreed today, we need to send these recommendations to the city commission.
Yeah, I
Yeah, so I'll make the motion that we send or request that the airport submit that to the commission
Okay.
on behalf of the airport advisory.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Chair Dempsey,
Approve.
Member Caudell,
Approved.
Member Diaz. Approved. Member Lester.
Approved.
All right. Continuing on with noise, I want to share with you our latest noise report. Again, this is the month ending a 21-month period. So this is January 2023 through September 30th, 2024. These are flyovers over inlet shores. And you can see there's some trends there for sure. Again, it can be, I think, in the winter months when it's colder, we have those winds out of the north, and you can see that uptick in the February-March time period. And so, again, that's just appreciative of the efforts that all the schools have made to reduce activity in that neighborhood. The flyovers as a percentage of total operations, it's really a small amount when you consider how many times aircrafts take off and land at the airport.
Just for the benefit of the new folks, would you explain the flyovers, what exactly we're talking about here?
So what we started doing is we have a program, like I mentioned earlier, VerTower, which actually records in real time and historically where aircraft are flying. We've tested the program out, excuse me, against the data cards that are in the aircraft, and we found it to be very accurate in terms of where an aircraft is located over a particular spot on the ground, like GPS. It uses the nbsp signal from the aircraft. And so we are able to, in that program, create geofences for certain areas that might, for example, by creating geofences, it knows when an aircraft has flown over a runway, and it can kind of get an idea. It makes an educated guess as to, when an aircraft's done a touch and go, or so it helps us kind of track and count without actually physically going on the map, because when we have as many aircraft as we do every day, that becomes kind of cumbersome. So we can run a report either daily or however often we want, and it'll just show us a summary of when an aircraft has flown in a certain area. And that's what we've done here, is just kind of track to see how many operations we've had and then how many flyovers we had and what's that percentage. So when you do it as a percentage of the whole, you can see, and it's not a lot, but you can see that the efforts have made, I think, a difference. The education efforts that have been undertaken and the cooperation we've received. Just to focus on Epic, and again, we meet with Epic every month. Epic and their noise abatement officer, Lexi, who's new, but enjoyed working with her so far. She's here today. Thank you for being here. So myself, the city staff, and the airport staff meet with Epic once a month and review their activities. We review if they've had any violations, whether it's obviously not mandatory, but it's voluntary, but they've made it mandatory for their students. So if there's been any issues, we review those to see, how their touch and goes have been. Say, for example, here's Epic's touch and goes. So there were some months, like last month, I think it was 25, when we had a high count, and we can actually review that and say, okay, what happened there? And, they'll come back and say, hey, we had a new student, and, 90% of that was that one new student. That student has been, written up or counseled. They have I think it's a 3 or 4 step program where they'll sit down with somebody, and just say, hey, what happened here? So they have a verbal discussion about it. If that doesn't correct the issue, it goes to a written, and they have terminated some of their flight instructors over this. And I think it's a great, been a good partnership, and we appreciate that. We've had similar results with Embry-Riddle and some of the other schools. Embry-Riddle is much bigger. It's a little bit harder. They have 300 flight instructors. So it becomes more cumbersome, but nevertheless, they are responsive, but not as. And here's a summary of all of the schools, and let me see here who is, and that's just, again, the flyovers. So we have the ability to track other things. So if there's something that somebody wants to see, or somebody says, hey, I'd like to see, if there's a suggestion either from the board or the community on something somebody would like to see, more than happy to take a look at that and kind of see, what we need to work on, what areas we need to work on. I know there's certain areas that are very hard to avoid just because they're at the, crossing of different runways. So no matter what runway you're using, or most runways, it's a challenge. But so this just kind of gives you a snapshot of EPIC's activity over the past month and over the past few months. And
Hey, Arvin.
yeah,
Can I interrupt for a sec?
Yeah.
I have a question. And I actually had a conversation with one of our city members, and in relationship to the meeting that was had and in relationship to this data. And one of the things that comes to mind when I see this, and I think for the citizens of New Smyrna Beach, they, as a civilian, as a non-pilot, as a resident, they are unaware. When we see these numbers, we're seeing a graph, we're seeing up and down. As for a non-pilot, they don't know what is required of a pilot to get a pilot's license. They don't know, is there a number of touch and goes that a pilot has to do? Is there a certain number of approaches that a pilot's going to practice? What is the average number of approaches a pilot's going to have prior to getting issued their pilot's license? For a private pilot's license, and then not even to mention their instrument license. And I think one of the things that we have failed our community is by providing an education to them as to what is actually going on. What is actually required to get a private pilot's license? What is the average number of flights that take place? What are the average number of approaches? What are the average number of touch and goes? How often is a plane, what does that look like for an individual pilot? And then how many pilots do we have in the EPIC system going through every 6 months, 12 months so that we don't have a baseline. I guess what I'm saying is I don't really feel that we have a baseline so that our community can really understand, hey, we have this program here, this is the way it is, it's a business, but this is what's going on, this is what the pilots are doing, this is how many students are doing this is how many touch and goes you can expect a day, yes, per student, but to help them understand more of what goes into getting that license, what is the process, so that they can understand maybe these numbers a little bit better. Does that make sense?
I can make a suggestion too. We have some level of background information on the website when they go to read all the previous information from the noise study, but I can add, for example, maybe some average numbers, maybe make a section that says here's what, from the pilot side, what they have to do so that the residents can better understand. I think that's probably a good outlet, unless you have suggestions. We did try and provide that in the previous workshops as well as the forum to try and explain that to people and to kind of give them, the layman's terms of the pilot side of things. But I can add that to the website if you feel that'd be helpful.
I think it might be a good idea. And I realize sometimes residents, they work, they get off work, there's a meeting, they come to the meeting, they have an issue that's pressing them, they address it. I mean, they really have, sometimes it's not that they've done research, it's just they're upset about different things going on around the airport. What is a way, and I'm up for suggestions, but I'm sitting here thinking, what is a way that we can educate our community so that they better understand what is really going on there versus just hearing planes and it's just being annoying? What is the requirements that people have to do?
I think it's a great idea because most people, the average human being that walks the earth, that doesn't fly, they don't know anything about that. They don't know that, they need to have X amount of this, X amount of that, this many hours here, there, whatever, and they don't have any idea. And so therefore, the noise abatement upsets them because they think that, you know, maybe they're flying too much or they're this or that. So I think that's an excellent idea, because the more they know, the less maybe it calms down a little bit and they understand how pilots do, what they do. It's like, you know, you want to be a sports car racer. You know, you got to go to school, you got to do this, you got to do that, and that's what it is. And then if you get that information after you see what we've done, then you will understand us more, and maybe it'll be easier for you, because we all up here fly, so we know.
And I will apologize.
And we're not trying to be nasty or
I'll apologize to
anything.
you. I did fly over your house late one night because I had to do a touch and go because I couldn't land due to weather. So I'm sorry.
Also, I think it's a,
Understood.
Okay.
Understood. So do you
Well,
have any thoughts on that?
I think,
I think it's a good idea to, I think Jacob's suggestion to update the website noise section to include here are the contributors to the noise and make that available.
That's okay. Well, I think obviously there are stakeholders in this, which is EPIC, which is Amber Riddle, which is something like that, right? So I'm sure that they would have an interest as well to educate the community, whether it's through their own methods or, you know, obviously we have open houses and things like that, so why not have that for the community to come in and understand, and even sometimes even speak to the pilots themselves and understand what they are going through, and that us as a community are becoming part of their future. So perhaps it becomes less of a, obviously the noise is going to be there, but there is sometimes a purpose to the noise, and that's that we are educating all these pilots. Also, as I look at your data and you asked if any recommendations or other things we would want to see, to EPIC's point, there is also a safety aspect to this. So whether it's self-reports, whether it's incidents on the runway, et cetera, overlaying some of the safety data would also allow us to understand if there are concerns down the road to say a change from 7 to 8 o'clock, et cetera, if we had an impact on the number of self-reports, on the numbers of any safety violations that occurred during that time, I think would be important as well.
So is that something that you guys can take as an action, Jacob, to go do, or do we need to make a motion on that? And
As far as the website portion, I can just do
doing
that, that's fine.
something with the
Yeah, I
website
can do
to include noise contributors, okay, and why? Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I'll
Specifically, the pilot training scenario of it requires this effort to get to that point, and then follow on.
I think a real understated, we always focus on this, we've been on this subject of the calm wind runway. A pilot also has to practice in crosswinds because they don't always get to fly and land in perfect conditions. So sometimes using the runway that's not what we think should be the favorite is a skill set that a pilot has to learn to be able to safely land an airplane, because we don't always get to land in perfect conditions, as much as I would love that personally. There is a reason for that to be done, and the community needs to understand that as well. So if there's some kind of data that possibly EPIC could put together to assist us in providing data that we can put on the website, that would be fantastic, so that we can actually help educate on that. Because again, they're thinking calm wind, right? That term's been a buzzword now for a year. They're thinking that term, and they're thinking, well, if they're not taking this runway, the winds favor that, why aren't they going that way? Well, they also have to practice crosswind landings too. And there's a reason. So that's part of the education that I think where we need to educate our community, so that there's a baseline of an understanding between both parties.
And if I may, in addition to that, I wonder if there is a predictive aspect to this, right? As we see, just as we look over data year over year, we can see the spikes happening in the same months. And so is there a way to also educate our community to let them know, maybe you're seeing this spike in August, by the time September, November comes around, it's going to die down, right? And so there's almost that set expectation that we will have some noise, and then next month maybe it'll be a little bit less noise, and continue to show that track and be more predictive so that they know what to expect as well.
Yeah, to your point there, as far as the times of year, obviously winds throughout the year, they shift, be more predominant certain times of year. So like I've had discussions with many residents as far as who live in different areas of the city. Yes, the tower does try to spread things out. Does that always happen? No. But during some times of the year that will change. In, like, for example, the wintertime, we do get a lot of these northerly winds. So like runway 220 gets heavily used in the wintertime. And so, yes, you'll see where some people may experience it, and, all of a sudden certain time of year, they may think, oh, they're flying over my house every single day. And no, they're not wrong. It's just that, yes, and to what Tim was saying, yes, there's going to be times where crosswind landings or whatever, just that approach, that's the whole thing, right? It's the variables that we can't always account for, that are, whether it be a traffic separation, weather, time of year, whatever the case may be. So you're right. I mean, it is, and that's what we try to, Arvin has done a great job with his, I think, with some of the graphs, and start show, so we do have some of the historical data, especially with Vertower, to try and convey and give information to the residents. Not that's going to probably make them feel a whole lot warm and fuzzy, but at least they have a better understanding of why things happen the way they do.
Right, and it goes back to the education point, right? It's, as somebody that doesn't fly, they may not think about the winds and the changes and all those variables. All you think about is the plane that's flying over your house, right? And so it's that understanding of all those principles and variables that we have to take into consideration.
Okay.
So I think the conclusion on that subject that we beat to death is that Epic will get with Jacob and provide hopefully some information, and then Jacob, you'll take that data, put it on the website.
I'll reach out to them if I need numbers. Otherwise, I'll be happy to add what. And then if you guys want something changed after that, I'll reach out to me or shoot me an email or something, and we can sort that out.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Very good.
Sorry, Arvin. Continue, man.
No, good feedback. That's why we're here. Any other discussions on noise before we go into just the general updates?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm good.
We're good. We're good. Let's move.
So we're going to get into just kind of an overview of just what's happening at the airport in general. So just as a reminder, here's our vision. For those who are watching for the first time, and as the aeronautical gateway to our community, the New Smyrna Beach Airport, our goal is what we strive for and we work hard for every day is to provide our users with the safe first-class aviation facilities. Not to say that we have all that right now. We are working, I think we have a really good airfield. It's safe, but we are always trying to improve it. And that's why we need everyone. It takes a community, not just our staff. So, and we do that by promoting the economic development. Just a real quick update. So during hurricane, or right after Hurricane Helene, we had supplies being run through, I should say, New Smyrna Beach through efforts of House Representative Corey Mills was flying almost daily out of New Smyrna Beach and expressed his appreciation for the airport and the conditions and everything, and that it enabled him to, make those deliveries. And I just wanted to pass that on. After Hurricane Milton, I won't post pictures of all the damage, but we did sustain a fair amount of damage. One of the things that we are working on now is we have a hangar that, a large commercial hangar that the doors are missing off of. We believe what happened probably was that we had a small tornado or some type of microburst come through. We did have a recorded wind gust at the tower of 103 knots, which is pretty significant, which is higher than what everyone else was recording, when you listen to the news and whoever. But against the tower's a little higher, so it makes sense that it got a little bit higher wind. But we had a couple hangars sustain substantial damage, commercial hangars. One of the hangars was recently occupied by a tenant who has vacated, and our intent is actually to, the hangar is beyond repair. And so it's actually going to be demolished, and it's a great site for future economic development and aviation development. That property is located off of Taxiway Delta, just down the street from American Aero. But Jacob and Tammy and myself are all working towards, with our insurance company, with a company called Synergy, who actually comes out, and they are really just turnkey insurance, kind of, what would you say, almost like a concierge. They come out and they help every step of the way, from taking the initial damage to getting the work done to getting us paid. So we're working hard on that to get everybody back up and running as quickly as possible. The one hangar that sustained, the doors were actually ripped off. That hangar, that's going to be out of service for months, but we're in the process of building a temporary door, so at least the building itself will be protected.
And to that point too, with the Milton damage, T-hangar tenants also had some damage to their hangars, mostly T-hangar E because it's the oldest, and something that's on the slate for rehab in the near future, as long as we can get the FDOT funding lined up for that. But just to those tenants, if you're watching this, to know that I've been trying to keep up communications with them and for them. The gutter damage on G and H is going to be kind of less of an issue and hopefully just get buttoned up as we go, but it really shouldn't impact them too much. But with E, there are some items that we've already been working on as far as making sure that the building is safe for the tenants to use, which we've already worked through that, and now we've safetied all the loose items and working to get that buttoned up for that rehab that we'll be hopefully doing in the near future. And so as far as that, and with the commercial tenants, we've been keeping up communication with them, and I've let them know, and if they're watching this and they still have something that we don't know about, please reach out to us, send us an email, give me a call. I'd be happy to try and make sure that we, because we do something, we can do it now, and then, we can deal with the insurance as we go. We have the FMIT folks out tomorrow afternoon to continue with their assessments and how we're going to get it sorted out. But yeah, it's been a long road. We never went fuel zero, thankfully. We did have fuel farm issues, which I think people were well aware of if you fly at the airport. And that was an electrical adventure I don't want to have again. But, that's why we're doing this fuel farm rehab coming up, which I'll talk about, which hopefully will try and mitigate some of those type of issues in the future. So
It sounds like most of the damage was related to hangars and structures. What about AWAS and PAPI and all the other lighting and everything else? How did we fare with those systems?
For AWAS, everything came back on. We had to reset a few things, but everything came back online. As far as I can see, and as far as the tower can see, we've been good there. Lighting, we've replaced quite a bit. We tried to mitigate that as much as possible, but as you can see from this picture, there's a couple of submerged lights right there. So that was from the new taxiway, and actually we had the contractor from that come and replace some transformers, and I had a class with my guys to do a little bit more of electrical repair, and so I think we're ahead of the game there, and we're just doing some inventory and cleaning up from that. But as far as being back to normal with minus a couple of signs we're working on, that's something that hopefully we'll have buttoned up in the next couple of weeks as well. But yes, we did have some decent airfield lighting damage. Vault's been happy, towers has been happy, minus some AC repairs we had to do to that, the units you can see on top there. But all in all, I'm very happy with how the airfield held up, and I'm happy that our staff has worked diligently to kind of get back to normal status.
Okay.
Did we have any damage over where the FAA is on our tower? Do we have, because we put those new air conditioning systems in?
Yeah, those units, to my surprise, were still there when we got back from after the storm. But I had the vendor out earlier this week to work on that as far as repairing what was damaged, and then to strap down for better strapping down for future hurricanes.
The hangar that suffered the damage that cannot be undone, except for a temporary fix, is the goal of that to have insurance provide another hangar there?
So for the hangar that's at Gary's, the 404 United that had that weird vacuum type of weather that pulled the doors out, Yes, we're working, in fact, the contractor, I'm calling him after this, but he's going to build a temporary wall, and the building itself will stay, most of it's actually concrete block. And so once we figure out how the doors, what doors we can move with and moving forward, we're then going to get it engineered and, you know, the city to approve how we do that for safety of the building, and then reskin and re-roof is our hope, and keep that building. Just it'll be essentially new, but the structure of it, the actual steel beams that hold everything together have been,
Is this
you
the
know,
one
looked
right
at.
before Higginbotham's? Is this the first hangar you see if you're going down Delta on the left?
No,
That's no, that's a different hangar. The one he's talking about is there by American Arrow.
that's the one that we're going to be keeping now. The
Got it.
one that Arvin
Okay.
referenced that the tenant had moved out of prior to this storm,
Yep.
that one we've been through the loop on that one as far as its ability to be refurbed, and that's not the case. So we're looking to demo that and then put that land out for an RFP in the future.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So this one, Aero Simple, I don't think we've mentioned this in past meetings, but this is exciting for us because of a few reasons. It'll have the ability, now mind you, we're in the early inception of using this software, but it'll help, you know, mitigate some things for us. You know, we use a lot of Excel and different ways that we log stuff. It's kind of disheveled and kind of old school way of doing things. So this software will help. It'll help collect everything into one suite, so to speak, for us to use, whether that be stuff for lease management, building, work order management, airfield management, non-airfield type of work order management, wildlife recording, you know, maintenance. It's got several things attached to it that's going to be very useful for us, and also potentially the ability, as we kind of work with it again, we're just learning this thing, and so looking to have a tenant portal that we would give, you know, the tenants would download this Aero Simple on their phone and be able to interface in terms of a work order. It's not going to be necessarily they can just message us, hey, what's up? But they can go on there and say, hey, look on there, I've got a light out. I've got an issue with my door. I've got, you know, name it. They can go on there and submit that to us for our staff to look at and take care of. So it'll be a little bit easier as far as, and it's a way for us to track the maintenance on that, so we can say, okay, well, this whatever is having, you know, continual issues, what in the future can we do to make this better? So I mean, that's really kind of a very high level view of what this can do, but point is it's going to be helpful for us, and hopefully something that will help us improve how we work with tenants and improve a tenant's life. You know, they spend good money to be at the airport, so we want to make sure we're delivering good services to them. So this will be something that we're going to be implementing.
And this is up and running now?
It's not up and running in the sense that we're using it day to day, because again, we're just in the class process right now with the company.
Okay.
So I'll jump in here and just give you a brief update on the nonprofit leases we talked about before. Lions Club, New Smyrna Garden Club, and the VFW all currently lease space from the airport. The land is not being used, is not adjacent to the runway, so it's not necessarily aviation or an aeronautical use. However, there's strict rules about, since the airport was deeded to the city in the 40s, the deed restrictions that go along with that say that you have to use that property for aviation use. With one of these leases were signed in the 60s, before some of the changes that exist now with the FAA, and I've been working to sort through these for a while with the regional office of airport compliance and land use compliance. With the recent FAA reauthorization that just occurred a couple months ago, there's been some updates, and my contact at the FAA office, regional office, told me to just put everything on hold. She is working out a few details where she feels like we'll be able to get everything kind of grandfathered in, so we'll be able to kind of put this issue to bed and we'll actually have new leases in place with these organizations that will be a little bit more reflective of what, you know, current legal requirements are with leases. They'll be in the same format as a commercial lease, but there are certain ways that, say, a nonprofit could use land that is not needed for aeronautical purposes. And where these locations are, they're not in an area which would has access to a taxiway or a runway, and we don't have current demand for that spot. So we're looking at getting that updated as soon as we can.
Well, that's good news
Yes.
to me. That's
I'll
good news that the FAA is kind of telling you on the side, just go easy, and it looks like we may be able to grandfather them in. But they're great organizations, and that would be the best outcome, I think.
I'll let Jacob talk a little bit about the history. We've had some exciting interaction with our museum, our local museum here. I'll let him tell you a little bit about what he's found and what Jacob and the museum have found together about our airport.
Yeah, so this isn't new, obviously, right, because it's history. But it's new to us and something I found exciting. I had a gentleman reach out to me from Germany. His name is Hans. And he's restoring a I forget the actual year, but it's a Mercedes 300 SL that raced at the New Smyrna Beach Airport back in 1957. So that led me kind of down a rabbit hole for a few days in my own time to try and find more out about this race. And if you're already well aware of it, it's probably going to be boring for you. But I did not know there was a race at the airport back in the 50s. And it's kind of when they were transitioning the Daytona kind of speed weeks, or the races that were there, transitioning from the beach over to the speedway in Daytona, which I think eventually happened starting in 1959. But they were trying to get out of that area, and so they wanted to add some more events. So what they did was they had a race at the New Smyrna Beach Airport. Now, I'm still trying to sort out exactly the route, and if you or friends of yours maybe know what that route was, please let me know. I'd like to be able to know what route that was around the airfield. But there is some cool videos online, and the local museum, which is just down the street here, they've got some here. The posts that they made show these newspaper articles from then when that race happened. And so certainly go visit that museum if you haven't. It's a great museum. But we've been working with the director there to kind of get more information, and they've made some Instagram posts about it, as well as elsewhere, I believe, Facebook maybe. But Carol Shelby won that race, actually. So if you're a racing fan, you think that's something that's cool. I found it extremely cool. So I wanted to share that with all of you, and I'm going to hopefully add this kind of stuff to the website as we go. And the more stuff we learn about it, and the more history we can learn about it. I'm big on how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you come from. So history, very cool. So I thought it was a cool little tidbit. We'll get more information we'll share in the future.
I shared with Arvin and Jacob that my dad was a Florida Highway Patrolman in 1957, and he worked that race. I've got a picture of his 54 Ford Florida Highway Patrol car. Okay, so it's amazing how these things kind of come together, isn't it? All right.
Just a few other updates that might be a little small to read, so I'll read it for you. The Sun Trail, for those of you who remember that. So this is an FDOT project, River to Sea. If you're familiar with this, it's actually really cool that they're putting this trail through Central Florida, and it's where you should be able to go from one side of the state to the other. A lot of areas like back trails, old railroads, whatever. So there's a portion of the trail, though, that we became aware of that they potentially want to put it through around the airport. So we're paying close attention to this just to make sure it doesn't impact us in a negative way. I've also been in touch with FDOT Aviation Office and the office, the intermodal office that's responsible for this trail to let them know, make sure to consider the airport when they're doing this. July 2025 is the estimated time when they will receive the status of this grant award. And again, just want to update you so that you're aware. No action required, but we have to pay close attention to this to make sure it doesn't impact. We talked a meeting or so ago we've talked about a couple times, an airport mobile app, the idea being to have communication between the tenants, have an interface for them, almost like a digital message board of some kind. So I did take this back to our attorney, who is here today to talk to you a little bit about the sunshine laws, and that's the primary concern with this is that we have both tenants who are on the board and tenants who aren't. But regardless of whatever, if we create anything, any type of communication device, whether it's a Facebook page or anything like that, everything has to be maintained forever as part of public record. So the suggestion was, and I'll leave it up for you all to discuss, and it's nothing you have to vote on or anything, but one of the suggestions is what if, the tenants formed a Friends of the Airport or Friends and Users of the New Smyrna Beach Airport and had a Facebook page of some kind. That would be something that the tenants could do, and as long as we're not managing it, that's not subject to the sunshine laws. So people could communicate, it's not subject to public record. So that may be something that, you want to consider, and, you can talk about that at any time. But if that's something that we would help, we could definitely promote it in terms of telling the tenants it's there, but we wouldn't manage it. It would be up to the tenants to manage. Approach questions. So we had questions, I think, were brought up during the last meeting about our approaches. I'm going to let Jacob talk about this a little bit more, but I did call our ADO, and then I ended up talking to the FSDO about the Flight Standards Office about our approaches. He gave us some good feedback. The high-level summary is we talked a little bit about this with Jim, as a matter of fact, and his recommendation is why don't we just maybe do a poll, send out a survey to all the tenants and see how do they find. We know there's 2 approaches right now that aren't working. We know that, and we're fixing that through this project, which Jacob's going to talk about in a minute. But other than that, what's the need? What's the justification? What other approaches are needed? And if we'd have to make a case. It takes about 2 years to get it approved. So it's definitely a lengthy process. But before we start that, before we go down a whole rabbit hole, we're going to do a survey from the tenants, see what their thoughts are. But did you want to go into more detail kind of on what?
Sure.
What's
so
required?
For I believe someone had mentioned night approaches on 2 and 20, and for that runway currently isn't lit. It's not eligible for lighting at this time. We're researching that as far as what we can do in the future if potentially we have the capacity to have that runway funded by the FAA. At this time, it is not. So for us to have approaches on there, especially lighting, anything beyond a circling approach would require lighting, which we don't have. For those of you that don't know, if you don't have lighting, the lighting itself is part of helping you get below a cloud deck. If you can see something, it allows you to kind of go to get to these other heights along the approach, depending on what that approach is approved to let you do. And obviously, New Smyrna, we don't have any sophisticated lighting, but a couple of the other approaches do have LPV approaches, which, meanwhile, non-precision, they do get you down to that 200, 300-foot height to get below clouds. And for 2 and 20, with it not having lighting, and you're not really getting anything better than a circling, and the way they view it, at least from our understanding that they've told us in the past, is that there has to be a reason to have an approach that, it would have to be a substantial improvement maybe to another approaches that you already have. And so an approach that can't do anything more than a circling, they may not do. Again, we can go down that and research it, and then they can tell us no later, or it's something that if there's another runway, like for example, I mentioned runway 11 might be a candidate to add an approach. But again, it would have to be something that if they're going to go down that route of having the engineers or however they do that on their end to get to the level where they'd be able to build the approach, again, it'd have to be a substantial improvement to maybe to approaches we already have. Yes, right now our night approaches for 7 and 25 we cannot use because of the issues with 7 and 25, which those should be addressed within the next, hopefully 13 months or less we'll have that done. But in the meantime, there's really nothing drastically we can do now. The approaches we have are what we have. We're fixing the ones that we have our night approaches back. But as far as adding future approaches, not to say that it's, we'd never want to come up here and just tell you, no, that's absolutely not happening. But, we definitely want to be able to just give the right expectations so that, we're not starting to put all this effort into something that may not happen. And then people be upset that it didn't happen for whatever reason. So just to kind of make you aware, I don't know if that word salad made a whole lot of sense. If you have questions, please let me know. But again, it's just the bullet points are, we already have LPV approaches that bring you down to a certain height. And yes, the winds, if you have predominant winds a certain way, maybe that approach won't work, and now you still can't get below, and there's alternatives for that. There's alternate airports. It's very much a reason why, as a pilot, you do that kind of planning. But yeah, it just takes time to do that, and we can do that. But I think the survey is a good idea to find out if there's something specific that we're overlooking, or maybe the FAA doesn't see that somebody can make a suggestion of. We'd be happy to research that. But again, just trying to manage expectations as far as what we can and can't do.
I think a huge improvement, Jake, would be to at least see, number one, what can we do to get funding to get that runway? A lot of people don't use that runway because it's not in the best of shape, number one. That should be a priority, because again, it's about again, I go back to the citizens. I want to try to diffuse the traffic, and I think a lot of people avoid that runway because of the condition of the runway, number one. Number two, if there was lighting provided to that runway, okay, that's still a lot better. Maybe we have to, maybe we use 29, 725 when those approaches. Right now, 29's the only one we can use at night, but still, I think that having that runway updated and having lighting for that runway would be huge for our city. And I think it would be very relevant to take the time. Everybody keeps kicking the can down the road on that runway for some reason. I personally am sick and tired of that.
So
I've seen that done.
Just to give you an update on that, so right now, we have a primary runway being 7225. Our crosswind runway is 1129, which are
Correct.
funded.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we haven't in the past had capacity or shown numbers to justify, according to the FAA, a secondary runway. Now, with that said, the recent numbers we have, plus with what Vertower's given us, we, at least in the initial kind of really rough calculations, it looks like we have the capacity to potentially justify that secondary runway. And so we're adding that as part of our master plan that we hope to start in the next maybe fiscal year. Was it 26? Is that correct? Fiscal year 26, which would be
Basically,
calendar year, October 25, to start that master plan process, which would include the research necessary to try and justify a rehabilitation of runway 220.
I'm really big about about having a backup plan. So I think that's awesome, first of all. I think that's great. But I think maybe a backup plan could be, I think a lot of citizens of our community possibly may be willing to, and it's going to require, number one, it requires a lot of money to update that runway, and I know that. It requires a lot of money to keep that runway in good condition, and I know that. Is that a tax our taxpayers would be willing to help share the cost of that? Has anybody looked into that? Is that a tax that our taxpayers would be willing to help to share the cost to provide more options for runways so that traffic isn't so designated on certain runways, but to diversify up the traffic flow a little bit to provide more options to pilots to use, is my thinking on that.
So for the FAA funding portion of it, that would just make it extremely affordable for us. Now, if they didn't want to be involved, yes, there is a route for us to be able to rehabilitate the runway on our own. Now, cost, obviously, asphalt have gone way up. You can't use remanufactured asphalt in an airport. It has to be virgin asphalt. That's a whole thing. And that costs, exponential amounts of dollars. Now, the FDOT would help at a certain percentage, and then we'd have to cover the other percentage. Now, we'd never, we want to try and maintain self-sustainability and try not to dip into the coffers of the taxpayers. But, you're right. I mean, there is a contingency plan. That's something that we're not completely saying is out of the question if the FAA can't. We're just trying to go down this route first. So, yes, to your question, there is a contingency plan and then also to justify ourselves, okay, for these dollars spent, is that going to be worthwhile for X, Y, and Z reason? Is it also going to potentially add, whatever the case may be? So that's the whole part of that decision-making process for us as an airport staff as well, and for the city, ultimately, because city commission is going to be the one signing off on future projects such as that. So
just to confirm dates, so we're looking at this, is what you're saying?
Correct.
And the time frame on that is when?
The time frame, so what you need is a capacity study. The capacity study can be done by itself, unfunded, or it can be done as part of a master plan. The master plan, we'll have to compete for those dollars, but with this new FAA reauthorization, the FAA just announced 95% funding, which is currently 90, for AIP eligible and bill funding, bipartisan infrastructure law. So A master plan is part of that. The downside of that is a master plan generally takes a couple years to do. It's very comprehensive. A lot of public meetings. The last master plan the airport did took 10 years. Now, it doesn't have to take 10 years. That's because there was some challenges there that it did not need to take that long. Generally, they take 2 years. Now, if we had had direction to say, listen, this is an urgent need, let's get a capacity study done ahead of time. I'm not sure what the cost is on that. We haven't done that. If the taxpayers, it's a great question. We could certainly look into that further.
I feel like it is an urgent need. I feel like it's an urgent need. I mean, I'm not trying to over dramatize that. I feel like
the urgent need right now is 725, and that's our priority. We have a provisional operating certificate because of the safety issue, the FAA deemed because of 725 and the RSA. Okay, we have to accommodate that. And when we do that, that'll give us back night approaches.
I guess what I'm saying is I know that. I know that 725 is our priority. Well, what I want to make sure is, again, I want to make sure we don't kick the can down the road on this again, on those runways there that are available to us that really does benefit our community. And that benefits our pilots as well.
And that's become a thing for us as well. So that's, I think currently that runway wasn't even on a thought in our mind for the next X amount of years. And because of these different reasons, because of our numbers recently, that's something we've moved up. So yes, we're right along in the same path as you.
Now that we've got a hard plan of work, we've got
we had preliminary discussions.
We've got everything done relative to the 725 and the taxiway B, all of that work that has to be done. Now that that's basically under contract, okay, we're at a point where we can start looking at a proposal like this, at an opportunity like this.
We had a preliminary discussion with and it's already on our list, our CIP list for the next 5 years. And it's outlined as, right now, it's outlined for fiscal year 2026. That was the earliest we could get, based on fiscal year 2026 is when it's currently calendared for the master plan update. And we already had preliminary discussion with FDOT and FAA, who both agreed, at least at this point, we won't know for sure. The way it works is we put in for a request, we put an application in, and then they have to take it up to their regional office, and basically, we compete against other airports, and they felt that would compete well. So there's no guarantee that would happen. There's no guarantee that master plan will happen, but it's very, as we're cleaning up all these things around the area, it's the next logical step.
So one of the things I would like to
and it doesn't just do the runway. It helps us determine all of the needs, the current needs, what's changed since the last master plan update. I mean, it talks about economics, it talks about runway, it talks about infrastructure, it talks about approaches, it talks about obstacle mitigation. So it goes into the whole gamut of making sure we can have a healthy airport.
What I would like to ask is that we make that, it doesn't need to be, I'd like to at least have an update or some type of conversation on that moving forward, so that it's not out of mind, but that it's present in mind, so that we get an update on that.
We can add that to capital improvements.
Sure.
220, okay?
Yeah.
All right, let's add that to 220, all right? But and I hate to say this, but from my experience with this, going back to 21, it's taken 3 years to get the biggest issue that we've got, 725,
handled,
resolved.
Yeah, agreed.
Get it to a point where, and that's because of all of the options that had to be reviewed, all of the environmental, all of the government, everything. It's taken 3 years. So, but there's no reason now that we've got that in the box and a bow around it that we can't start looking at 220. So let's add that, and you guys give us an update on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to kind of move along here.
We're getting there. For some reason, I lost my. Hold on a second here. There we go. So we'll move along quickly. So as I talked about before, Airway Circle, tenant moved out. Building is being scheduled for demolition. It did get further damage in the storm. We're putting together, as previously requested, we have just not gotten to it, but there was a request to put together an airport project history map. in between that with the storms and just all of our other projects, we have not gotten that accomplished yet, but it's still on our radar. Just want to let you know that it's not completely fallen off, and we will get that done. Landing fees. So I wanted to give you an update on that as well. That's a topic that's hot around the whole region. For those of you who are not aware, a lot of airports in the area are looking at implementing landing fees for all size aircraft, small, large, which is being met with a lot of pushback from the aviation community. Every airport is different. Some airports are not doing it, some airports are. One of the challenges with it here is that you have to show two things. You have to show the need. You have to show that you need the revenue. It is not about charging a fee just to charge a fee. If you do not need the revenue, and you do, then when a user complains, the FAA comes in and they investigate and they say, show me all of your rent, show me all of your finances, and prove to me that you actually need this. So some of the airports are in a different situation than us. Most of their traffic could be coming from other airports. The difference between our airport and other airports is that the majority of our traffic is actually based in New Smyrna. So they already pay. They already pay fees. They're already paying for fuel. They're already paying for rent. So they would be exempt from landing fees. When we ran the numbers, we looked at gaining about $10,000 to $15,000 of revenue annually, which is not something at this point in time that we felt that was very wise for us to go after. Also considering that we're still cleaning up a few things here and there on our, of our own. Are we making the most money everywhere else that we should be? So those things are, for those reasons, it wasn't something that we were bringing to you for a recommendation, but I think when we talked about it before, there wasn't a vote on it, but I think just kind of verbally, everybody kind of agreed that this wasn't something we wanted to pursue. Nevertheless, keep it on the back burner, not put it out of the totally off the table. But as we kind of see what's going on around the country, no airport has been able to actually implement this yet. It has been met with extremely strong pushback from the community. And all of the, except for one airport by Orlando did implement the landing fee ordinance itself, but tabled the agreement and rate charges policy. So, and that airport may exempt small flight training aircraft. So this is kind of one of those things I want to update you on and paying close attention to. There's a lot of nuances here, so if anybody wants to talk about it further, I'll be happy to, but that could take quite a bit of time. Any questions on the landing fee?
I'm good with monitoring that.
Yeah, okay.
And keeping tabs on what
it could be something that we will decide that in the future it makes sense for us.
Yeah.
I think right now we're patiently watching and waiting and seeing how it's developing. I fully support other airports who need to do it based on whatever their needs are. Everyone's different. Some stand to make $300,000-$400,000 a year from this. And they justify and they can show that they really need that revenue. And just so everybody's understanding really quickly, the airport receives funding. Okay, the airport does not receive. We don't participate in the general fund, so we're not receiving tax. Like another city department, we're not receiving revenue from the citizens directly. We are self-funded, and we do receive revenue in the form of federal grants. But those federal grants don't cover general operating costs. So where the FAA does allow an airport to charge fees, or any type of fees, whether it's landing fees, fuel fees, whatever, the FAA wants the airport to be self-sustaining. So they encourage an airport to seek ways to make revenue, but within reason. They don't want to be, if you're showing that you're charging a landing fee, for example, to be discriminating, that's a big red flag. The FAA will come in and shut off your funding, and there goes millions of dollars a year. So in the case of here, is $15,000 worth millions of dollars of funding? Probably not. So let's make sure we do this correctly, and so that's why I'm just monitoring it instead. Quickly, we're just going to wrap it up with a quick capital update.
And just if you would, for those of you that are newer to the board, if you would like more background information, it's a little more detailed, please come by the office, obviously separately, and we'll be happy to go through and kind of get more of the nooks and crannies, so to speak, of this if you'd like. Otherwise, I'm just kind of going to go through a high level of this. Alpha is complete. If you haven't been out there to see it or taxied down it, it's a beautiful taxiway. Avcon and their team did a great job. Halifax did a great job paving that runway, and Pruitt did a great job lighting it. So very happy with that. And, Tammy's still working on some of the finalizing of the paperwork, and she's doing a good job there. So we thank her for all her efforts. Fuel farm improvement, and that'll be, as I mentioned before, rehabilitation of 2 existing tanks and adding a third. We have a walkthrough tomorrow with the company doing the work, and that's we're moving forward on that. So we will be updating the tenants as much as we humanly or possibly can to make sure that they are well aware of how our fuel is going to be. Things are going to be, as far as self-serve fuel goes, we're not exactly sure the dynamics of that yet. And as we learn them, we will pass that on so we can continue to give as much service as we can to the tenants. It might be full service only for a while. We don't know. So just keep in tune on that one if you do use the airport. And fuel farm, that'll be exciting though. Short-term pain for long-term gain. For taxiway Bravo reconstruction 725 corrections, so that again is another one that we're hoping to start soon. We've given all the go-aheads. We're waiting on notice to proceed from FDOT to go ahead with Massey's Construction Services to start on the phases for that. We will give detail, again, same thing as a fuel farm. We'll give as much detailed information to the tenants, users, and so on as we can. So that way people are well aware. NOTAMs will be out there to show the phasings and how that's going to work as far as, the tower is going to have to be heavily involved, and Mr. Zeiler is well aware of that, I'm sure. It's going to be kind of cringiness for a little while with that one because it's going to be very disruptive to our day-to-day operations when that starts. All the flight schools in the local area have been made well aware of that, but we will try and make it as easy of a process as we can. But again, short-term pain for long-term gain, which would be the fact that we'll get our night approaches back and we'll have a nice, beautiful new taxiway with LED lighting and all the fun things that can go along with that. So hopefully getting started on that before the end of the year. But that could always shift for various reasons.
What was the estimated time frame of that?
6 months is right now. I think that's kind of best case scenario is what they're telling me.
It's broken into multiple phases, so it's not like the runway is closed the entire time, but there are periods of time when 725 is completely closed. So yeah, it's definitely probably one of the projects that's going to impact the airport the most that we've had in years. So
yeah, so please be patient with us. We'll do what we can to try and make this a good project. For 7-2-5 PAPI and electrical vault, that is going to be an upgrade to the 7-2-5 PAPI system. Not that users probably don't even really notice. It's more so we'll notice more on the maintenance side of it, but it will be improved PAPIs as far as I think they're going to be LED now. And then the electrical vault will get some upgrades, and we'll get a new generator for the tower and runs the tower and the airfield. So that's exciting for us, but I don't know if users will necessarily notice it too much.
having a new generator is big because you may not realize it, but that generator, every time the power goes out, doesn't even skip a beat for the most part.
That generator's original from the tower. It's
Yeah.
20 years old.
Yes, it's maintenance heavy, but it's been a workhorse for us for many years.
We couldn't make it last any longer.
Let's stretch it out further.
And then this one's an exciting one, I think, for everybody involved, would be the admin building. So it says admin building design, but we're finishing up design, hopefully getting to construct in the near future. And so I just want to show you, you're showing the elevations here, a preliminary of what the building would look like on the exterior. We don't have, fancy colorings or anything to show you right now, renderings that show you, fake people walking around and stuff like that. But, this is something, there's still some changes that'll happen with it, but this is all in all what it'll kind of look like, general idea. And so it'll be 4,500-ish square feet, 43 to 4,500 square feet. And there's the interior layout, single story. We're going for more of the coastal New Smyrna vibe, something that's going to give a good welcoming feel to users that come into the airport. We want to be able to provide a good service for those that come in, and then not only from the air side but from the land side, and to have an area for pilots to sit, do some flight planning, maybe have a snack, say hello to the airport staff, have a meeting room maybe for some tenant meetings, future community events. That's something we really want to do as well. We've talked about we really want to do or community events, and we're all of it. If the community wants to reach out to us and something that we can support, we're all for that too. So
Is there
This
a
building-
second floor there? Or is
No, this is just a single floor.
Is this going to be T111?
Say again?
Are you going to put this as T111? The outside? What are you using for the outside? Have you thought about that?
As far as the,
Your
Siding.
outside building.
oh, siding, I'm sorry.
Siding.
Yeah, we haven't got to the finishes yet. That's a meeting we're upcoming. We do have a 100% design meeting in the near future as far as that kind of stuff. But
Okay.
right now, on this, it shows some siding and then a metal roof is kind of what, again, it's kind of like a coastal vibe.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going for.
The reason I asked about the T111 is it'd be, for hurricane purposes, it's concrete, but it looks like wood and
you mean hardy board?
hardy board. Yeah, I call it
Hardy board
T111.
siding.
Yeah, but it's the same thing.
T111, yes, similar
It's
styles, yeah.
I mean, it's really, you know.
And that's, yeah,
and
we do
because
have,
we get hurricanes, you know, and our weather, that would be really
I
good.
won't say what I thought something about Tijuana, I didn't know.
No Tijuana. We're not going there yet. Just kidding.
yeah, so, no, we're very excited for that building. I'm sure that KMA will have all the fancy whatever stuff they can do to help protect it and keep it looking nice. So yeah, comments and questions for anything, all
Thank
of
you guys for the updates.
millions of things we said.
Okay, we'll just work our way around. Celeste, do you have comments or questions or anything you want
I think we've covered a lot of territory, and
to? Busy day.
yeah, and I hope that the people that are out there will appreciate, you know, all the things that we did go over, because it does take a lot of time, and we all do have other things that we do, and so just, you know, I just hope that everybody thinks that, you know, we've spent a lot of time on what we need to do, and we will get it accomplished eventually. We can't do it overnight, you know, but, because I've been working on a lot of this stuff for a long time, so it just takes time and money.
And on this page, I just want to apologize in advance. Tim let me know that one of these or more of these QR codes has failed, so if it does, I'm going to fix that.
Okay. Welcome to the board. We're very happy to have you join us.
Thank you. It's been, everyone's been very welcoming, so happy to be here and look forward to working with you all.
All right. I have just a couple of comments. In the last couple of years, we've made a hell of a lot of progress. If you think about hangars being built, taxiways being modified that we've done for safety, new lighting, new signage, the things that are happening, the equipment shed. I mean, we've been consistently moving down the line. Frustratingly slow, okay. But that's part of what we're doing because of all the government involvement in this. But I love it when I look at capital improvement projects and the first thing on the slide is taxiway alpha complete, okay? So let's keep that focus going. And as we remove items from this capital improvement projects, let's, as Tim brought up very appropriately and very timely, we need to be putting the new items on here that we need to be starting in the early stages of getting it going. And I think two that need to be on here are what we're going to do with 220, or what we can do with 220, and what that timeline might look like, and the airport master plan. Okay, we've alluded to Appendix A. What's the
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A.
That's already, yeah.
We've talked to that just a little bit, but I think we need to keep the airport master plan in our focus, okay, because there, even though, as Tammy mentioned, it's got a 2019 date on it, there's stuff that goes back 20, 30 years in that master plan that we need to be moving that forward, okay, and keep that up. So my request would be, let's add 220 options, okay, and airport master plan to this capital improvement list and go forward. And you guys are doing an awesome job, and we appreciate it.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
you guys are really doing an awesome job.
First of all, thank you, citizens, for coming. Appreciate your input. It does matter. Hopefully, the new time that we are proposing will be more accommodating, so spread the word throughout the community. We appreciate that. We want our community involved. Thank you, tenants, and thank you, vendors, and everybody else who may be here today for your input. We're all here to serve our community, and I appreciate the work that the airport team is doing to try to, make this not only the safest airport, but a well-functioning airport as well for our community, to keep our community safe. So thank you guys for your hard work, because I know that it's personal for you guys. I know that it's just not a job, and I appreciate that. So thank you all. Tammy.
I thought of one more thing. When you mentioned you would, on the poll for additional approaches to go out to tenants, Embry-Riddle's not a tenant, but they probably should have some input to that. Okay, so let's not just do tenants, let's do more like stakeholders. Stakeholders is the right way to approach that.
That's good thought.
Okay?
Sure.
All right. And that's it for me. Are we done?
One more ad, just wanted to, while we're talking about capital projects, there was something we didn't talk about. We talk about future projects. We've got a list, and it's in our master plan, but we've got lists going down the road. So we should probably be including that. We've got, for example, wildlife fence that's been on the list for a while. That's also scheduled for design. That's going to be designed, but that's huge because that's going to help us with coyotes and the things. There's some natural areas around the airport that don't have good protection. Years ago it was just considered, well, we've got natural barriers there, we got wetlands and things like that. When Rhonda and Adam did a wildlife hazard management program back in 2019, well, it was kicked off in 2019, it was published in 2022. We're now getting to the recommendations that were in that, and one of them was wildlife fencing, and that's very expensive, but that is FAA funded, so that's in our capital project list. So when we come back, we'll make it a point to make sure we have a further look down the road for everybody, so you can see. And some of those ones that are 3-4 years out, obviously, those can be adjusted. Sometimes they need to be adjusted because of budget constraints or changes in conditions. So we'll have that.
So Tammy, to confirm, the next meeting
Yes,
will be January 27th at 5 p.m.
yes, here in this chambers.
here in these chambers. Okay.
And the city clerk has already updated the city site to reflect that.
That was the next item on the agenda. You took care of it for me. All right. And the next item after that is adjourned, and I'm going to adjourn this meeting.